Hello, my name is Douglas Bloch. I'm an author and mental health educator. Welcome to your Depression Recovery channel, where each week we talk about practical tools and coping strategies for healing from depression and anxiety. Today's video is called Back from the Brink. It's actually a series I've been doing for quite some time, interviewing people who have survived depressive episodes. And today I have a guest who's been on here once, maybe twice, Noah Thomas, who is a tremendous YouTube videographer and has, like myself, been to hell and back. And we're going to talk about how he came back and how he was transformed. What the subject of our video is your recent experience in treatment, which was a major transformative experience.
Yeah.
And it was for drinking, alcoholism, right?
Correct.
And when was the first time you started drinking, and when was the first time you knew that it was an issue in terms of not being able to control it?
So the first time I drank was 13, and I didn't control it well that first night. Hindsight's 2020, so I think the moment it became a problem is sort of, it depends who you ask or how you look at it. I will tell you one thing though, from the moment I first drank, I had some void filled. There was some part of me that didn't feel comfortable in my own skin that was instantly remedied, and then my behavior from the moment I first got drunk at 13 changed. My pursuit of drinking, it was off forevermore up until that point. Once it was over, I wanted to experience it again.
You know, that reminds me of what the great educator John Bradshaw said when he said, it was again 13, when I first took my first drink, it was the first time I felt truly alive.
Yeah.
So some people have a biochemistry that alcohol does that for them.
Sure.
For me, you know, it just put me to sleep. It was like a tranquilizer. So, and what about, so, you know, depression, alcoholism, it runs in the family, cancer, everything runs in families. Crime runs in families, right? So what about your own family? Did any of either your parents or uncles or aunts have issues with alcohol or addiction in general?
Oh yeah, 100%. My dad's a recovering alcoholic right now.
Well, there
He's
you
got
have it.
20 years of sobriety, but he didn't get sober till I was 16, and for the last 10 years of his drinking from age 6 to 16, he was a daily drunk. And my mom is a recovering opiate addict who now has almost 20 years, and the same thing. She was in her addiction for all of my
See, I didn't even know that all these years I've known you, over a decade. So not only did you have the biochemical thing going, you also had the modeling going. So that,
I did.
So that was just a double dose.
Yeah, it was.
So when was the first time you actually pursued treatment or help, when you said, you know, I think this has gone far enough, I need some sort of process by which I can maybe modify or even stop my drinking?
So I got into a lot of trouble when I was about 20 years old, 19 or 20 years old. It was my first time getting in trouble with the law. It was alcohol-related issues. And I was sort of going through like my first experience in my life where I didn't know what to do, who I was, how I was going to get along. And the consequences were mounting, and my ability to cope was essentially none. It was all contingent upon drinking to feel a sense of wellness. So the first time I tried to get healthy and see what life would be like without it was through a 12-step program when I was 19. But it only took as long as it took for me to go back out there and try drinking again. And eventually it led me to a breaking point at 25 when I checked myself into Astoria Point inpatient rehab. Yeah.
Right, that's the kind of, we were starting to get to know each other then, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you know, since we want to come to the present really quickly, there were other attempts of treatment you had. You went to Crestview, maybe 2018, 2019?
So I can sum up all my drinking leading up to
this thing we're talking about.
This thing we're talking about now.
Right.
From 19 till 33 years old, I have been trying to figure out how to be comfortable sober and or figure out how to control my drinking, one or the other. And I've always been halfway in each. I'm a drunk who wishes he was sober, or a sober person who's uncomfortable with thoughts and feelings and circumstances. Coping mechanisms wane, and I go back to the only thing that appears to be working for me. It led me to a point this last time in 2020 where I was in rehab twice. Crestview was one of them.
Right.
And it wasn't working in general, the way I was living. And just think of the very, very stereotypical bottom point for any addict or alcoholic. Finances are in trouble, marriage is in trouble, health is in trouble, mental health is in trouble. And I had a moment of clarity. I asked for help again, which takes a lot of courage. And then I wound up in treatment this last time, which I pray will be the last time.
The last time.
Yeah.
At least that massive, right. So what was the name of this treatment center? And how is it, I think we're coming up to Passover. They say, how is this night different from all other nights?
Sure.
How is this treatment center different from all other treatment centers? Obviously, it worked in the way the others did. There must have been something special about it.
There definitely were some things that were unique about this treatment center. I went to Treehouse Recovery here in Portland, Oregon. The biggest difference on paper that has nothing to do with like my anecdotal experience, but just as a fact, is that it's a 5-month program. Previously, I'd been in 2 separate 30-day programs, which, as it turned out from my story, it just wasn't enough time.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I thought you'd been in a 90-day program. A 30-day program, you're just getting started.
Yeah. Well, something I didn't know until I went to this program was that the addict or alcoholic, being in the disease state, mentally speaking, as far as addiction goes, takes about 30 to 40 days to come out of. And what that basically means is that my brain sees my drug of choice, which is alcohol, as something I need for survival. It goes beyond reason, and it's a subconscious wiring that is, of course, reinforced when you're out there drinking. So a lot of the things that led me to relapse before that I inherently took ownership over, like, oh, it's just me. I did a bad thing, so I'm bad. I lied, so I'm a liar. I drink, so I'm a drunk forever. It was a lot more just based on neurochemistry than I thought. And it takes 30 to 40 days to get out of that disease state, assuming you're working hard to get out of it. I'd never had an opportunity to see what that was like. So being in treatment longer just gave my brain a chance to truly settle.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
I do want to ask one other thing, because this is a depression recovery channel.
Yeah.
And the first time we met, you were in the psych ward, and you had read my book, When Going Through Hell Don't Stop.
Yep.
It's now on Audible, by the way. Anyway, so plug. But
Plug,
you were in a suicidal depression. So I know that alcoholism and depression are 2 different diagnoses, and probably in some ways 2 different parts of the brain, but I know they're interconnected.
100%.
Do you think that, let's just get back to the treatment center. When you were in this treatment, did they address the depression and anxiety as well as the biochemical drinking stuff and all the habits you're talking about?
They did, but it was sort of brought to me in a different way when it comes to depression, anxiety, and then post-acute withdrawal syndrome. Right. So one of the things that the staff there wanted to really have a chance to objectively identify is what parts of my mental health were sadness, right? What parts were appropriate response to being in post-acute withdrawal, which comes with a slew of symptoms that very much mirror depression and anxiety, and then what things may be inherently and diagnosably real for my brain.
Right.
And that's something we had a chance to discuss. And I have to admit, the more I learned about myself, my childhood, my trauma, my attachment issues, and then just the reality of what happens when you wash your brain in alcohol for as long as I have, the more I'm starting to think that I do have a baseline of some anxiety and some apathy, I suppose, but I don't know that I'm as inherently depressed as I thought I once was. I'm just not sure. We're still figuring it out.
I never saw you as a depressive.
Yeah.
As someone who, as a writer, occupational hazard, as I know what that's like, I always, if anything, I saw you as bipolar or manic depressive because of the tremendous energy you have.
Right.
But, a label is only a label, and what a label does is it identifies treatment, right?
Absolutely.
So you're doing things when you were there and when you've been out that are working. And who cares what the damn label is and what, So let's go. So what was the single most important thing you learned in treatment about yourself, about your past, and about what you need to do to stay well?
Yeah, okay. 2 things pop into my mind that are incredibly powerful. I want every addict and alcoholic to hear this. So I'm gonna go ahead and address you guys who are watching, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here with Doug and myself. But if you're struggling with a substance abuse disorder of any kind, something that really was powerful for me, which I think could be important for you to understand, is that it's very, very predictable when it comes to relapse. So let me rephrase that. Relapse is an incredibly, incredibly predictable process. And that is something that I didn't internalize before going in there. One of the things that was so heartbreaking about going to treatment for the 3rd time and asking for help, being an adult male who once again wasn't taking good care of himself and needing help from others, was this idea that at any given moment I was going to relapse. It was just going to bite me in the ass, and I was never going to have a chance to stay sober because alcohol just eventually found me. And so one of the things that we figured out through the addiction ed curriculum, and then of course through therapy, was that process is organized and it's predictable, and there are thought patterns and there are behaviors and there are warning signs that are so incredibly obvious that there was no need to be afraid, assuming I was keeping an eye on them and I was putting in place a structure that would help me stay safe and be more prepared with dealing with that cycle of relapse that I thought was random when it really wasn't.
So what are the things you need to look out for that when you spot, you know you have potential danger around the corner and you have to do something to make a detour? What are the things you notice in your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors?
So I bring everything back to the 4 dimensions of wellness. I think it's applicable to everyone. It's tangible for everyone. If I stop, I'm going to keep it about myself. If I stop going to bed the time that I had already agreed upon within myself, if I start sleeping in, if I start eating like complete junk consistently, if I stop physically taking care of myself, that's a warning sign. Socially, if I stop engaging with my social obligations, if I stop communicating with my recovery team, if I stop going to the gym and seeing people, if I start canceling appointments with people and my behavior starts to get regressive, that's a warning sign. Spiritually, if I decide I don't want to pray anymore, if I start having thoughts like sobriety is not very good for me, if I start awfulizing sobriety or getting into what's known as euphoric recall, recalling the good times and choosing to bastardize or put apart all the things that were so painful, that's a major warning sign. And a really easy way that you can spot warning signs within yourself are being very socially plugged in with people. Because if 2 people on your team are worried about you, you should take massive concern. So those are some of the things that are pretty important to me.
That's exactly what people have asked me in terms of depression. And Mr. Bloch, I'm just afraid I'm going to fall apart again. I don't have any control. No, there are simple signs and warning signs that will let you know that you're coming to a breakdown, and you can at any time when you recognize them, take appropriate action. Like make an appointment with your therapist. Relax, step up your medication if you're on medication, go for exercise, reach out for people if you've been isolating. So yeah, I mean, depression and alcoholism are chronic relapsing conditions. And you know what? You're never done with it.
Correct.
I'm 72, you're 33. When you're 72, you'll still have a predisposition for alcohol. It never stops. And that's why they say, I'm a recovering alcoholic, I'm a recovering depressive. So yeah. So the fact you kind of found that it was predictable and you could see, there were things that you could see and therefore could control, and you needed 5 months to really integrate it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, just understanding that my brain sought out dopamine, right, and alcohol as a priority for survival. It had put it above sex, it had put it above food, and my behavior indicated that at the end of my drinking. My brain thought, for lack of better words, that alcohol was a necessity for me to stay alive. And especially in the first 18 months to 2 years of getting sober, your brain, the likelihood that it could slip into a regressive state and into a disease state is pretty high, which is why you have to keep such a close watch on it, which is why I would do certain things in the past that led me back to drinking that I just thought was just me being a bad person. I didn't care enough, when really it was just an alcoholic brain doing what it thought it needed to do to survive. So separating the two and getting some understanding, like that what's that expression, the 10,000-foot view of it, just made it easier to not personalize so much.
And you said there were 2 things you learned. What was the other thing?
The other thing I learned was that I had some very legitimate traumatic issues from my childhood.
Which you just mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
The drinking of your father, the opioid addiction of your mother.
Yeah, 100%. And that they impacted me. That I normalized parts of my childhood that weren't healthy from a developmental standpoint. That was really, really hard. I cried a lot of tears about this when I was there. More tears than I realized I had, because I think I had just taken things so personal, and I beat myself up, and I had so much shame about my behavior that to even imagine that certain things happened when I was a kid that very, very much would impact how I would behave as an adult, and certainly how I would cope with stress and fear and anxiety, that they were outside of my control, that it wasn't my fault, and that it was sad, and I was okay to mourn that. And so to be able to have a moment to objectively do that, but then understand as an adult, it is my responsibility to take care of myself now. There's no adult figure out there that's going to nurture that. I think learning that was really good at letting it go, at letting go of some of that angst that had really been hurting me.
So what are your daily habits and lifestyle like now that helping to keep you sober and hopefully will continue to keep you sober? Are you going to any either groups, outpatient groups, or 12-step meetings, or therapy? So what are the things you're doing now, especially in terms of group or individual connection having to do with some sort of therapy?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, because identifying what wasn't working in the past was just as important as figuring out what we wanted to do differently and what we might implement going forward. I do have a lot of research before getting sober this last time to see what really wasn't serving me. One of the things that I very much take a lot of pride in is making sure that I'm looking after my biological health, my psychological health, my spiritual health, and my social health. And so what that looks like from a biological perspective is making sure that I'm taking care of myself physically. That could be making my bed in the morning with intention. That can be brushing my teeth, taking the time to dress myself, shower, getting exercise, the food I'm eating, the water
But weren't
I'm
you doing
drinking.
that all before?
I was, but I wasn't doing all four. But so I didn't want to negate or neglect the part of self-care that came more natural to me. I just wanted to be more intentional about it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say with the bio.
Because you were, you know,
Like, why am I making my bed? Oh, because this is good for me and this is going to help my recovery. I'm choosing to go to bed earlier. Oh, because I need rest so that I can better cope with stress tomorrow to help my recovery. So they're being intentional is important. The psychological aspect is just being open and honest about what I'm thinking, expressing what I'm feeling, making sure that I'm differentiating thought from feeling and not conflating the two. So being mindful about how I express myself, telling you when I'm scared, even if I'm insecure, things like that, really honoring how my brain is working so I can navigate that more openly and not internalize it. The social is very simple, is being around like-minded people who have common goals, who will support me, with whom I can support.
Does that include any sort of a regular group? Of course, we're in the age of COVID. My God.
No, I have regular groups. So for me, I have a fitness community where we still meet in person.
Oh, yeah,
we do stick to
amazing,
COVID guidelines. But also with Treehouse, I have access to their group sessions every day. I just came from one today. So I'm still seeing my Treehouse team at least once a week in person for group, and I do once a week alumni virtual meetings. So I have 2 meetings there. I do one 12-step meeting a week as well, and I meet with my sponsor in person once a week as well. So I'm trying to stay as connected as possible socially.
Well, I mean, that's a lot more than anybody I know is doing in terms of, you know, support. I mean, that's to me, I think that's so critical.
It's so critical.
I mean, I think, you know, human beings are pack animals. I think one of the reasons that depression and anxiety have spiked during the coronavirus is isolation.
Isolation.
It is, to me, the greatest danger of mental health, period.
I loved being alone when I was a drunk. It was how I preferred to be. I felt so disconnected from you and from everyone else, including myself. The only way I experienced a sense of connection, be it a false one, was with my alcohol. One of the things I learned in treatment, which I didn't previously know, which was kind of its own mini aha moment, was that alcohol was the only drug, excuse me, that produced an elevated amount of oxytocin in the body, which I didn't know. That's the same.
Yeah, it's when
it's the hormone.
Women are breastfeeding, and
right? Or if you and I are hugging, right? Or our sex would be the highest. So I didn't realize that the only connection I was feeling was with alcohol. So naturally, without it, I was void. The opposite of the opposite of depression is connection, or something like that. The point is, it was impressed upon me that I needed people if I wanted to stay sober. Period. Healthy people. Previously in my addiction, I would reject healthy people. I didn't want to be near healthy people. It was very threatening to me as a drinker. But as a sober person who's desperate to stay sober, I want to be here with you, and I wanted to be here beyond the fact that we were recording. I wanted to see you. I went to my group earlier because it's something that's important to me and it's congruent with who I want to be.
Any final thing you'd like to say to anybody watching? I would like to say something. Never give up.
Yeah, well said. And honestly, what was crossing my mind was the same thing. If you're watching this and you're struggling, and if you've let yourself down a million times, just make sure the next day that you brush yourself off and you try again. I have failed a lot at trying to get sober, at trying to be mentally stable, at trying to be a good friend, a good person, a good husband. There's a lot of failure, but there's been one more success on top of each one of those failings, so to speak. You're worth it, you matter, be kind to yourself, and yeah, never, ever, ever, ever give up, no matter what. I would have possibly given up had I not found your book. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. It's not easy, but I think all of it's worth it.
This has been Douglas Bloch. Thank you for watching this video. I guess I'm doing the outro, right? If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section. If you like this video, got something out of it, give it a like. Isn't that important? Likes,
of course it's important.
That's what drives people to your 100%. Channel, for heaven's sakes. Yes.
Likes are currency.
Yes. What else? Oh, if you want to subscribe to this channel, click on my photo in the closing credits, and you'll be taken to this subscribe page. And if you click on the little bell to the right, you'll be notified every time I do a video or a live chat.
Hey, look at this guy.
And until we meet again, this is Douglas Bloch wishing you the best in your mental health recovery and your sobriety.
Make sure you support Doug and all that he does. He's crushing it. Watch these videos all the way through. Hit the like button. It is currency for YouTubers. It matters. Subscribe, share it. Feel free to check out my YouTube channel and keep supporting this mad scientist. He's doing a lot of good things.
Okay.